In France, a young ambient musician by the name of Charles undertook an interesting new project. He was going to record the sound of himself sleeping and release it under the name La Nuit. Charles lived alone in a rural area, which would remove things like car alarms, traffic, and such from being recorded. He planned his project for many months, acquiring the sensitive equipment to capture all outside noises as well as his own during sleep. Finally, on the 27th of September, he decided to execute his plan. He set up all of his equipment and fell asleep at midnight. The next day, Charles reviewed the recording. For the first hour, the recording played his own tossings and turnings, as well as some distant dog barks and a few car alarms. So much for his plan to distance himself from the cars. These continued throughout the second hour as well, until Charles heard something that horrified him. For at exactly 3 hours and 24 minutes in, the recording played the sound of his bedroom door opening. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." You blink your eyes and pull up on your elbows. Your clock glows red in the darkness. It's 3:23. "Do you want to climb in bed and tell me about it?" "No, Daddy." The oddness of the situation wakes you up more fully. You can barely make out your daughter's pale form in the darkness of the room. "Why not, sweetie?" "Because in my dream, when I told you about the dream, the thing wearing Mommy's skin sat up." For a moment, you feel paralyzed. You can't take your eyes off of your daughter. Then, the covers behind you begin to shift. You crawl into bed at around 9. Funny, that's a little early for you, but you don't seem to care. You toss and turn for a few minutes before you feel it. Somebody's watching you, you're sure of it. You scan the room, finding nothing, but still, you feel uneasy. You lay back down, facing the room. You shut your eyes and try to sleep, but you can't. You still feel the eyes on you, watching you. You pull the covers over your head and the feeling fades. You relax and close your eyes, but as soon as they shut, the feeling returns. You're scared to move the covers, to search for the eyes that you know are watching you. You're terrified, but you yank the covers down, and as soon as you do, your heart skips a beat. You scan the room, seeing absolutely nothing yet again. The feeling disappears, and you scold yourself for acting like such a child. You roll over toward the wall and quickly fall into a peaceful sleep. But let me ask you this. Do you know how many hiding places there are in your room? I do. During a wedding reception of a young couple, the guests decided on a drunken game of hide and seek. It was decided that the groom was it, and he eventually found everyone but his new bride. Eventually the man became furious and decided it wasn't funny anymore and left her there. As weeks went on, he accepted that she'd had second thoughts and went on with her life, so he did the same. A few years later, a cleaning lady dusted off an old trunk in the attic of the building where the reception had taken place. Out of curiosity, she opened it. Inside the trunk was the rotted body of the missing bride who'd apparently became locked in the trunk she'd hid in. Whether she'd suffocated or starved was unknown, but her face was frozen in a scream, and there were huge scratches in the inside of the trunk where she had tried to get back to the man she loved. In Berlin, after World War II, money was short, supplies were tight, and it seemed like everyone was hungry. At that time, people were telling the tale of a young woman who saw a blind man picking his way through a crowd. The two started to talk. The man asked her for a favor. Could she deliver the letter to the address on the envelope? Well, it was on her way home, so she agreed. She started out to deliver the message, when she turned around to see if there was anything else the blind man needed. But she spotted him hurrying through the crowd without his smoked glasses or white cane. She was, naturally, suspicious, so she went to the police. When the police paid a visit to the address on the envelope, they made a gruesome discovery. 3 butchers had been harvesting human flesh and selling it to the starving people. And what was in the envelope the man gave to the woman? A note saying simply, This is the last one I'm sending you today. Have you ever seen someone die on camera? A snuff film is a recording of the actual murder of a human being that is subsequently passed around for entertainment purposes. Suicides and accidents don't count. According to the MPAA, the FCC, the FBI, and the everlovingsnopes.com, there's no such thing as a snuff film. Yes, this includes faces of death. Anything you think might count is faked, falsified, or not made for that purpose, such as those tasteless videos you find on those shock sites. This is a lie. There are, as best as anyone can tell, between 30 to 40 snuff films floating around out there. The earliest is a silent film on decaying nitrate celluloid, simply titled La Mort d'une Fille, and bears the date of 1896. The latest, judging by the hairstyles and the presence of a Frankie Says Relax t-shirt, was probably made in 1983 or 1984 and is on Betamax. The films vary in violence, but they all include seemingly ritualized sex, followed by the slaying of a girl with dirty blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, who appears to be around 19 years old. Every film has the exact same girl in it. In the summer of 2013, I found myself driving home alone on Highway 902 from a party. It was almost midnight, and needless to say, it was pitch black. As was the usual at night, I was on edge. I had the radio off, and could hear nothing but the muffled roar of tires on pavement and the dull hum of the engine. I stole a glance into the middle rearview mirror and saw nothing but darkness through the black window. I know that I looked backwards and saw nothing, I'm sure of it, just the seemingly endless blackness of the night. I remember it so clearly because not 10 seconds later, a car passed me to the left, headlights on. I had one of those sudden adrenaline rushes, like when you think you see a person outside your bedroom window, or when you're startled awake at night with the feeling of falling. 10 seconds earlier, nothing had been behind me. And then suddenly, a car. I drove the rest of the way home shivering and knowing something was off. The next morning, I found 2 sets of scratches near the back of my van. One was on the left rear, one was on the right. The car was pretty old. They could have been there for months, but that was the first time that I distinctly remembered seeing them. In hindsight, there are 2 possibilities for what happened that night. Possibility 1. By some glitch in reality or something paranormal, this other car had somehow appeared behind me within 10 seconds of me checking my mirror, like some weird ghost crap or something. However, the second option is what makes my blood run cold whenever I consider it. It didn't even occur to me until months after the fact, but it makes me dread driving alone at night even more. Possibility 2. The car was normal. It had approached me to the rear and passed me to my left. However, something large and wide, and as black as the night, had been clinging to the rear of my car, obscuring my view through the window and leaving deep scratches on the sides. And I had inadvertently driven it home with me. This had actually happened to me a few years back at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. My sophomore year, I roomed with a girl named Kara. She was a jazz vocalist, but her main interest was opera. We had a small room on the 6th floor of a dormitory called Juniper Hall. The walls were thin, and her late-night singing and voice practices would keep me up late. After a month or so of lost sleep, I convinced her to move her late-night practices to the music studios in the Merriam Theater building a block away. Around 8 one evening, Kara announced that she would be practicing late for an upcoming recital and probably wouldn't be home until around midnight. Great, I thought. That means I can actually go to bed early. I was beat. I had a horrible day in the acting studio and was ready to pass out as soon as I had dinner. She said goodnight and left, coffee and sheet music in hand. I made some grilled cheese and soup, gobbled it down, and immediately began to prepare for bed. By the time I got out of the shower, my eyelids were so heavy I could hardly even brush my teeth. I pulled on my PJs and crawled into the top bunk of our bunk bed. I was out as soon as my head hit the pillow. I should take a second to describe the layout of our apartment. When entering the apartment, the bedroom was through a door immediately to the left. Our bathroom was inside the bedroom, just past the bunk beds. UARTS is nice in the sense that you don't have to share bathrooms. Anyway, I woke up to the sound of the apartment door closing. I opened my eyes and groggily checked my phone. Midnight on the dot. I rolled back over and closed my eyes. I heard Kara enter the room and stop in front of the bunk bed, checking to see if I'm actually asleep, I thought. She flopped down on the bed below me, which was strange, as she was a stickler for brushing her teeth and washing up before bed. Then again, exams were just around the corner, and we were all exhausted. The mattress below me creaked, and then was silent. I couldn't even hear her breathing. I started to drift off again. I was just on the edge of deep sleep when I was startled awake again by a noise. A key in the lock, the door opening, and Kara entering our apartment, humming an opera tune. The mattress below me creaked.
This is the story of a day where there was all this blood. A man was walking around and blood started coming out of him everywhere. There was so much blood it filled up an elevator. He went to the store and there was just blood all over the place. People were slipping in it and they were all grossed out. He tried to go swimming and all of the sharks went nuts and bitten everybody. He got chased by all the vampires ever. One time, the blood got a kid and a dog. At the end of the day, everyone decided they would send him to space so that he would stop getting blood everywhere. The scariest part is that the man was you, or was a lady if you're our lady, and you forgot that this happened.
Thanks for listening, and remember, you cannot hide from the void.